No, I'll let you do it. I'll let you do it.
All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Transition Defense. We're here in our third week, and I personally am very excited. Our usual third, Chelsea Poe, is out this week. She's in Amsterdam, doing a film festival, shooting, living her best Chelsea Poe life. And
That's what Chelsea does, right?
She does. And so instead, we have someone who I'm very fortunate to have met a few months ago, because she gave an incredible and impassioned statement in defense of trans women in sport. Julie Day, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's good to see you again. That was a bittersweet time to be meeting people. I would have rather meet you under better circumstances, but
absolutely. But I'm glad we did, and I'm like, and you're like, oh yeah, and I know Carly, and I was like, oh my gosh, I appreciate that you two have like your football connection, because Julie plays football in Columbus, and I think that's awesome, and I'm so excited to hear more about your adventures doing that. And so I think that's one of the things about like those hearings and those situations, is that it's obviously we are there under terrible circumstances, but also there's such great community that there is such real genuine care and concern in our like little get ready room. Like we ended up having a pizza party mid hearing because
Wait
it was going
a
on
pizza
so long.
Party? Oh, do tell.
We had a huge pizza party in the middle, and I think there was something that my spouse pointed out, was like, all the trans people get together and get a pizza party. Meanwhile, because we look out for each other, we make sure we're all fed, make sure we're all taken care of. It's a long day, and frankly, there were an awful lot of us, because we showed up in force, and even though our legislature didn't care because they're awful, and that's really unfortunate, but neither here nor there in this moment, though I do have a point on Ohio later. But we were still, I think it says something about our resilience and our collective, unity in those kinds of moments, that we all came together. And I was really fortunate to meet people like Julie and to get to hear her speak in such a great way, especially here today on National Women and Girls in Sports Day. And so I'm really excited to have two other trans women in sport who have had positive experiences like I've had in finding that community and finding that love and passion for the games that we love and are so passionate for. And so just so excited to have you here today.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Unfortunately, I did have to skip the pizza party because I was just sitting there revising my speech for the 15th time, because they're like, yeah, you have as much time as you want. You have 5 minutes. You have 3 minutes. They may speed time up on you. I don't know. Apparently they can control time. So we're just going to do with what you got. So good luck. And so
I stop at kids' healthcare when you could control time. Yeah.
I mean,
but that was
they
the
are trying to roll
one thing.
Time back.
But that was one thing. Seeing you do it, and seeing you, and also getting an opportunity to interview the next day for the story I did for Outsports on how sports help sell a con game. And let's be real. Click sold a con game.
Absolutely. I mean, he just got caught,
and now he's selling a bigger one.
Yeah, on talking about how these little piecemeal legislations, I mean, in many ways, you saw his, exactly what he was saying of, you can use this incrementalism to get bigger, items removed. You saw it by the way that they combined the sports bill into the youth healthcare bill, because so many of those legislators are like, well, I just don't like boys and girls and women in sports, but they don't even say boys. It's always men in girls sports, which I think is always a very interesting rhetorical trick.
No, they want to make sure that they can say the two things that transphobes always say. And Shauna, if you've heard me enough, you know this one, that transgender women aren't women and cisgender women are inept at sport. That's what they're trying to sell.
Those are the two lies that they love peddling. And it's so, and again, on National Women and Girls in Sports Day, I think it's so important to point out how many amazing women athletes I'm so fortunate to have in my life. Between the teams I've played on, the people I've played against, the people that I see and consider my closest friends, I am so incredibly lucky to have them in my life and to be a part of that. And I just think that that's the biggest shame of it all, is how much that their efforts, their skill, their hard work and dedication gets downplayed just so they can sell their hatred. But
And they're all awfully quiet today. I didn't hear anything out of them about National Women and Girls in Sports Day.
because it's about celebrating people. Who would they have to celebrate?
And the gender criticals don't do that. They don't want to talk about that. But I'm just wondering. But to begin with, Julie, who is a woman in sports who's influenced you?
I'm actually going to have to do something that's a little interesting here. I'm going to reference someone who's actually been one of your guests before. Our good friend Jacqueline Taylor Cook has actually done amazing work. Everything that I've been able to do in my sport, in my career right now as an athlete, is based off of the work of women like her. And just one of those people who is just so, like, I don't think she would ever admit that she does this much work, but she really does. And it's inspiring to me, and it helps, kind of guide me for where I'm heading.
I would concur with that one, because Jacqueline is awesome and incredible, and in many ways blazed the trail. I wouldn't be playing football if she didn't put the bug in my ear saying, "You can play." Oh no, regulations! You can play. I didn't know.
What better role for a offensive lineman to clear the way for those behind her? Like, really, really and truly, her skill on the field showing up off of it. And so, Jacqueline, if you're out there listening, thank you for doing what you're doing, and we can't wait to see you kick ass for the Pittsburgh Passion this upcoming season. Yeah, I'll even root for Pittsburgh for you. So thank you.
That's one thing I do want to do. I want to make at least 2 trips this season, because the nice thing is my own team season ends ahead of the WFA season. So I'm gonna take a trip up to Columbus because I want to see Julie play, and I want to go see Jacqueline play. And
now, is Columbus in the same? Are you in the same league? Because I know there's a lot of bifurcation in there.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting league. So there are different divisions. So the Pittsburgh Passion is what they call WFA Pro, and it's sort of like our top tier division. The Columbus Chaos is in Division 2. So we're sort of the next one in the pecking order, and then Division 3, and then there's a developmental division. But we actually play across divisions fairly often. Okay. So the schedule isn't out yet. Schedule isn't out yet. There's a chance that I end up getting to play against her, and I think that could be a very entertaining time. But yeah, we have played pro teams before. We played Detroit Venom last year when they were pro, and then the St. Louis Slam, who ended up going to the WFA Pro Championship game and actually had Boston on the ropes for a little bit there. So they played us like they deserved that spot.
All right, I respect that. As
Shauna, how about you?
Thinking about my influence.
Yeah,
honestly,
who influenced you?
There's 2 women in Cleveland who compete not just nationally but internationally, and so I have to give credit to Sam Hutter and Lisa Fox. And so I'm going to tell a story. I think I might have told you this back when it happened a year ago, but as we are getting ready to start, I'm getting ready to be on my 2nd season of the USA Dodgeball Premier Tour, and that first tournament, I was all nerves. It was a big deal. Like, I'm playing against the kind of competition that I'd never really seen before, where every team is just so full of these amazing athletes who are so skilled at what they do. And I've been fortunate to play with Sam Hutter, especially. She was on my remix team in my little local rec league for dodgeball, and she was incredibly encouraging of me to keep going, to keep pushing, to go out there. And after the tournament ended, it ended up that we were all on the same flight back to Cleveland, and I ended up, because they're on the same team. They played for this team called LFG last season. and I ended up seeing them sing together, and I'll tell you, it honestly meant the world to me that they were like, hey, come over here, come sit with us, hang out with us while we wait for our plane. And
Oh,
like it really made me feel like I was like, I was a part of like, like this like group of traveling, that there aren't many of us who travel from Cleveland, and it just meant a lot the way that the two of them reached out to me after and really made me feel that kind of belonging. And so that's something that like really meant a lot to me, is like, again, thinking about the ways in which they opened that door for me and made me feel included, and how I always want to make sure I'm helping those who are coming after me as well. So thanks, Sam. Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate it.
and Shauna, you've been doing that. In fact, piece of that influence, they're gonna be seeing it out in Arizona this weekend, because you're going out and about to get out there, get a little tournament action. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm excited. The Premier Tour's first stop is this weekend in Tempe, Arizona, and so I think we're playing it like, yeah, we're playing, and I've got three different teams, because I am just like free agenting so far. I'm just kind of trying to pick up and play with some different teams, which has been kind of fun. I like getting to experience different like teams and play with different people, because I was on the same team for women's all last season, and so it's a nice change of pace, honestly, to kind of get to meet some new people and show differently like what I can do without like this like team that was already kind of really established and that I was able to add to. And so it's kind of a fun, different challenge for me, which I'm excited for.
Well, hey, like I said, we're going to be keeping an eye on you
Oh, yeah,
all through this big weekend, and if
we'll
you
be
get some.
streaming on Dodgeball Live. So we stream
Oh,
our
well
games
then,
stream on Twitch, and so I'm excited for that.
we're definitely going to be doing some things to pick you up, and if possible, we might run some highlights next week. For
That'd be
me,
cool. I like that.
for
Yeah,
me, and
please.
if I had to think of an influence, actually, having grown up in sports my entire life and having had an opportunity to be around, I mean, to have athletes on your block. I mean, I grew up in the same area with 3 Hall of Fame athletes who grew up in the same area I grew up in. And and of course, there's a lot of local stars growing up in Omaha, but one really stuck out. I mean, one of the first people I could genuinely call a hero was Martise Ivy. She was Nebraska. She was an all-conference player in 1988. Got Nebraska to their first NCAA tournament the same year. And when she was in high school, and probably the most dominant girls basketball player the state of Nebraska ever produced. And if you're from Nebraska and you watch this podcast, I will fight you on that if you have a differing opinion. We can have that debate. But if she did something on Friday night at a ball game, I was doing it at the Y the next day. Whatever it was, if it was a move she did in the game to create space and score points, I would do it the next day. And as great as she was, there was another player I got to see play living in the Midwest who I think will be in the news soon because of another player in the Midwest who's pounding close to her scoring record. Getting to watch Lynette Woodard play as a little kid. And also getting to see professional women's basketball in your town as a little kid. Those things stay with you. And because that was at the time when Title IX was really in knee pants. There was still a such thing as the AIAW. And by the way, I think always remember the AIAW, what it meant, what it was, and what it meant. If nothing else, at least somebody on this National Women's and Girls in Sports Day should be giving that history out to people. But
There's so much
now
great and deep enriched history in women's and like
yes,
I think that's such a good point though. Like again, back to all these things that should be celebrated. Like
that's the thing. You notice the gender critical types never want to talk about that. You see, they don't talk about real issues. They don't want to talk about a real issue. They could care less about. They're not following the WNBA trade deadline. They're not saluting the great start in professional women's hockey we've had with the rebirth of the PWHL, which is good hockey. They don't really care about women's sports. They're just here for the transphobia. That's why I call them Karens against women's sports, because that's what they are. Now, in addition to being National Women and Girls in Sports Day, this is also Super Bowl week. So,
that's very true.
So real quick, who's your pick?
I'm gonna have to go I think it's the Chiefs. I think this glove story deserves a championship, and I think everyone was calling, Kansas City as being down and out. They weren't going to make noise, and sure enough, here they are, back-to-back championship potentiality. I think the Chiefs seal the deal, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the 49ers do win, and I think it's going to be a good game regardless.
Now you're saying pick. Are you saying who I'm rooting for or who I think is going to win?
Both are good.
One.
Both are good.
Okay.
Who you're rooting for or who you think? Either one.
Because I told you, I'm a Cowboys fan. I can never root for the 49ers. That is just never going to happen.
Okay. We can run with that.
Maybe if they were playing someone worse, I won't start too many fights with you here today.
I will. That's my job.
I was going to say the Steelers. If they're playing the Steelers, I might root for the 49ers, but
all right.
See, y'all need to leave my Steelers alone. Leave them alone. We know we're bad. We have Kenny Pickett at quarterback.
Honestly, though, we had jokes like we were going to make a bet because Carly was like, the Browns aren't going to make the playoffs, the Steelers are, and I was like, I told her, I was like, it's either going to be just the Browns or both, and sure enough, Mike Tomlin, it was both, and it ended up being a wash, and I'm like,
I'm going to give love to Joe Flacco because I've always been a fan of Joe Flacco.
I've been a Joe Flacco fan since 2023, and I think
I've been a Joe Flacco fan since he was at Delaware. I like this guy. I've always liked him. Even if it wasn't
I can understand why a Browns fan would have some issues with Joe Flacco.
Absolutely.
Kind of did some trouble to them in the past, but
just a bit.
Yeah, I'm rooting for the Chiefs. I also want to see the absolute meltdown of white dude Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it this week when
I'm still calling it Twitter.
Yeah, when Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are on the 50-yard line and they're just sitting there waiting for the deep state to kick in.
I just think that's just why
the worst people are so upset about every time the camera cuts to Taylor Swift, and that makes I will be a little petty and say it does make me a little happy. I do enjoy just how much she annoys everyone else, and there's obviously problems with and I think but also it's just football's supposed to be fun, and Taylor Swift becoming a Chiefs fan and bringing a whole new audience into football is fun.
It is.
It's supposed to be fun.
It is. But I think this is also this is going to be a better Super Bowl than a lot of people think. And I like the fact there hasn't been a lot of hype. I mean, there hasn't been a lot of ultra hype. Even the Taylor story to me has not been as hyped up to the level as it could have been. So for me, I believe that if you're looking at it from an objective football standpoint, this is going to be a lot closer game than a lot of people think. I think it's going to be a very close game. I see an overtime game. I see an overtime game.
I have not done much.
Spread is
betting.
Chiefs 3 right now.
Okay, so we're very
I mean, there's a reason to root for either team. I think the Chiefs are going to win at 35-31, but I think Brock Purdy's going to show out. And I'll admit I have a soft spot for Brock Purdy partly because of where he went to school. He's an Iowa Stater. He is a Cyclone. If someone had told me in my life there would be a starting quarterback in a Super Bowl that was an Iowa State Cyclone, I'd tell them no way. Hell would freeze over first. Well, they're ice skating in hell right now. I want him to have a bang-up game, but I think it's Patrick Mahomes.
And a 7th-round pick story is pretty storybook in its own way.
No, not only 7th-round pick, but Mr. Irrelevant. He was the last man drafted, and here he is starting the Super Bowl. I mean, and speaking of from one underdog story to another, how about there is power in a union, and it looks like it might be starting at Dartmouth. Dartmouth men's basketball is a union shop.
All right.
That's interesting. The National Labor Relations Board earlier this week ruled that Dartmouth's men's basketball team are employees of Dartmouth.
Interesting.
Wow.
I'm very curious about the precedent
Ooh.
that sets. I love, as you know, look, I think we're pretty firmly pro-union here on this podcast. So like, like I'm very excited. That's really interesting. I'm very curious to see what, if anything, happens in response to that.
That's one also, of course, for second week in a row. This might just become a regular part of this podcast. What did Erin Reed uncover now? Because now she caught the New York Times slipping.
What a mess. That Pamela
That's not
Paul
hard, I
was a
know.
fucking mess.
It was a mess. Oh my
And it's just
god,
like
it was horrible.
so clearly, I just think it's the everything that you can accuse others of, we're going to do, is like, just citing nothing. And then I think her response downplaying the journalistic efforts of those like Erin Reed and Evan Urquart. I've only ever read his name.
No, Erin, no. Urquart has been at the forefront. Evan Urquart has been doing what he's been doing for years.
Is such a disservice, and I think that's such an important thing of how, if you're a trans person advocating for yourself, you are an activist first before anything else you do. And I think that's
I get what you're going, and I agree with you, but at the same time, I'm going to speak as a journalist. I'm going to put my journalist hat on too. I understand the idea of, because Dawn Ennis and I, good friend of mine, former cop, we used to have this discussion a great deal, because Dawn would say, I'm a journalist, I'm not an activist.
Yeah.
And here's how I answer. I'm a journalist who is also an activist.
And I got into a fair distinction. I
got into journalism in part because of activism. I became a journalist because I was as a little kid growing up where I grew up. Whether it was news coverage or sports coverage, I didn't like the way that Black people were covered. I didn't like the way Black communities were covered. I did not like the biased way it was covered. My dad always told me, well, quit complaining about it, become a journalist. So you know what? I became one. And part of my journalism is involved in the activism to change that story around, to bring some change through the craft. That's the only place. For example, Evan earlier this week talked about, I'm not an activist. I've never been an activist. And that's fine if you don't. But if you call me an activist, I'm gonna say thank you, because that's part of what I do. That's part of what I do in my work. It's part of what I do in my craft as well. Now, that doesn't mean that I cannot. That doesn't mean that I don't that I can't be objective. I can interview a Gary Click and be professional and on point, even if I don't like the man.
Sure.
And I'll say a point.
That goes to show your all-star credentials as a journalist. And I think that's something that always is worth pointing out, that, you've been award-nominated, award-winning. You've been doing it for a good while, and you do it very well. And so
I'm just trying
I think it speaks to you as a journalist, and I just think making sure you get that credit is important to me.
I appreciate that, but going back to this article, Erin, yeah. I mean, but here's the thing: they always do. If you really want to talk about the activists, the real activists are these people that put up these articles. And also, more news: the National Center of Transgender Equality survey the results came out. 90,000 trans Americans took part in the survey, including yours truly.
I did too, but I can't.
I put mine. I put mine in, and they found that the detransition rate was slightly under 3%. Slightly under 3%.
Not bad. I mean, at the end of the day, some people are going to change their mind for one reason or the other. Be it, actually, I am just not trans and I don't like those people at all, which is a weird thing to do, but you know what, to each their own. But most are like, hey, shit's hard. It's hard being trans in the year, even though as we've long since reached the tipping points and been completely tipped over and poured out. But I think there's something to how difficult it is to, I lost all my friends at the time. My whole friends group, that was my friends group of my 20s, slowly but surely, I saw them fall away from me, and that's even not even going into my very weird family, but that's again neither here nor there.
But
ultimately,
here's
like,
the
it's
thing.
hard. Like,
I really think people don't want to talk about, in my mind, the real reason why a lot more people detransition than they'd ever dream. Because what does it take to transition, especially in this country? It takes the green stuff.
100%.
And a number of people I know, and yes, there's societal pressures, there's family pressures, but for a good number of people, they got to stop just because it's it costs money. Even when you have insurance, and even when you have the means to do it, it's still a lot. And you put that on top of Shauna, what you're talking about.
It's a lot of pressures to put on someone. Not to mention the like gestures broadly about all of the, hate and prejudice that goes with it, be it in your day-to-day or in your online sphere. I don't blame anyone who taps and like, I'm out.
I don't
get
either.
I mean, I was in that space for years before I transitioned. Was like, no, I can't do this. I either don't have the money, my family won't accept me, like all of these other factors. What's my job going to do? How am I going to be able to stay employed? Like, these are all real factors. And for the longest time, I was the non-transitioning trans girl and like all of these chats. And then eventually they're like, yeah, you finally got caught up, didn't you? Like, well,
Yeah. I mean, I think we were all there. I mean, come on.
One of my best friends is in the exact same boat. And like, she was always very like, I know I should, like, and she had like socially transitioned, but had not went a while without actually going and medically transitioning. And she just was, I think there was a certain kind of apprehension, and like, cause you do like there's so much more pressure and so much more financial pressure that goes with it. And I'm very lucky that she's very happy and with her decision to do so, even as it sucks sometimes, because it does suck. And I think there's being able to have space to be like, oh yeah, actually, this is a lot and it can be awful, just as anything else, any decision we make. And I think that's something that kind of gets lost in the nuance in like the detransition discussion. That there's
exactly.
Because it's no, it's great and you shut up is not really helpful to conversation, even as they're arguably doing the same to us and be like, well, it was a mistake for me, so obviously it's a mistake for everyone else, which is like such a logical fallacy. But but still, I just think that giving space for that and treating those, even when they disagree with you, with a level of kindness and respect is not always easy. But it's important to try and remember to take that step back, even as we have people like Gary Click who are just such jerks about it. And,
exactly. And
like sitting in those rooms, watching them like watching them just stare daggers at you as they're giving their dissertations on why you're a terrible person is just like, it's a different world, and you have to sit there and you're like, I can't respond the way that I want to right now, and I can't respond the way that they can. So you have to sit there and
that they can say these awful things, but the minute you say something that is really in kind, you're the one that's the problem. You're the one who's aggressive, and not because there's no such thing as a reaction to them. You just have to sit there and take it. And this and I just think that's obviously such a ridiculous false standard, but the whole thing's ridiculous. And like, I was talking with like one of my best friends last night, and we were going over this quote. It was this quote by Jean-Paul Sartre about how anti-Semites aren't bound by reason or logic, and if anything, they love being able to flaunt it because they don't have to adhere to the constraints of convincing you, because it's not about convincing you, it's about wearing you down. And I feel so very much of the anti-trans discourse falls under that same canon,
yes, it does.
It's like they're just throwing things, and it's not about whether you can answer it, because they really don't care. Like, you can't be, oh gosh, the woman who listened to Christina Rogner. You can't be her and listen to those stories of families and be like, just kidding, I'm voting anyways. And like
that was the one who
that? Like, as someone who listened to so many of those kids, who saw and met those kids who were
that was what gets me on transition defense. more with Julie all day. And later you're going to find out why she'll hit you all day. Because remember, we show highlights here. Also, we're going to talk about some premier dodgeball, more on the Super Bowl, and more to come. Stay with us. I'm Carly. She's Shauna. She's Julie. Chelsea's overseas. We're transition defense. Stay with us.
Good afternoon, everybody, from the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, Texas, the site of this titanic battle later today, Pep Bowl 2024. Hello again, everybody. I'm Terrell Leash, alongside my broadcast partner, Myron Katz, and the coach in the booth, Ohio Ribbit. And Myron, it's the old feud, the New England Dogs, the Oakland Cats. There can be only one.
Oh, it's gonna be incredible, Terrell Leash. It's gonna be a titanic battle. The New England Dogs, the Oakland Cats. Two teams with plenty of offense and plenty of defense. Legendary coaches. Butchie Belichick for the Dogs. Whisker Saban for the Cats. Two strong-arm quarterbacks. Unbelievable talent on both sides of the ball.
Coach Ohio Ribbit, the coach in the booth, joining us. Coach Ribbit, what do you see in this game, starting with the quarterback position? They are the two best quarterbacks in the Pep Football League this year.
Tuna Tender Vittles, lefty, strong arm for the Cats, led the PFL in touchdown passes. Then on the other side, you've got Jack Russell Terrier. Jack Russell Terrier, big, strong, can run, can do it with his feet, can do it with his arm. Led the PFL in total touchdowns this year.
There's no love lost between these franchises. The animosity goes back for decades. Taylor Fox, you had an opportunity to talk to both these owners. They've been sniping and barking and meowing at each other all season. What did they have to say, Taylor?
New England Dogs owner Josie Howard and Oakland Cats owner Kirby Webb really don't get along. In fact, you could say they fight like, well, cats and dogs. And this year's been no exception. And it's true, the animosity of these two franchises go back to a number of altercations throughout the years, stemming, and especially it goes white hot in the playoffs. And now with the championship on the line, both have a lot to say to and about each other. The Oakland Cats talk about a commitment to excellence. Well, what they really have is a commitment to cattiness, Taylor. That's the way they've always been since the 1970s. And I'm going to say this right now. I have the finest franchise in the Pet Football League, and we're going to prove it in the Pet Bowl. Oh, and for your information, Kitty, if you think you're going to catch a pass anywhere near my area, Kirby, you better think again, because you're going to get hit and hit hard. You're going to need a lot of catnip when I'm done with you. Oh, so dog breath's foaming off at the mouth again. Look, first, get your squat leg butt off the bench. You're a backup. I'm in the starting rotation at wide receiver. I'm going to be on the field a lot. Tuna Tender Vittles is going to throw to me and all our other receivers a lot. And we're going to win the Pet Bowl. Oakland Cats. Just win, kitty. That's what we do, and that's who we are. Meow! Terrell Leash, if those two lock horns on the field at the Pet Bowl, who knows what could come of it? Hard words from some hard pets.
The talk will soon be at an end. Pet Bowl 2024 later today here on Shauna Sports 1. We're going to have all the action for you right here. Carly, Shauna, Julie, back to you in the studio. We'll see you later today for Pet Bowl 2024.
And welcome back to Transition Defense. I'm Carly Chardonnay-Webb, along with Shauna Atkinson, and our special guest, Julie All Day, linebacker, defensive line for the Columbus Chaos of the WFA. And let me, I just want to tell you, if you're a ball carrier like me, find where number 52 is, run in the opposite direction. It will save your life. Just saying.
That's also good advice on defense.
That too. just look, if 52, wherever 52 is, don't be there. But
Done.
coming back in, what was that, Shauna?
I said done because I'm like, that's where like I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm good. I love and appreciate y'all playing tackle football, but I was like, no, thank you.
Oh, come on, Shauna, why don't you come on out?
Yeah.
You know what?
I do enough damage to my body through like after a
I don't know.
dodgeball tournament, I'm already all bruised.
I think
and,
Shauna
like,
with that
sore.
left hand, I think with that left hand and her throwing ability, she make pretty good quarterback.
No, see,
I
don't have the
see.
arm strength though. That is always going to be like I was like, yeah, like
It's
this
not arms.
cannon,
It's
like
never arms. It's hips.
not arms. It's mechanics.
that's fair.
It's so
the
much
hips
is
don't lie.
mechanics.
That's true, but
It's all in the
but
hips.
yeah, but so much is mechanics. So much is biomechanical because I get the ball downfield pretty decently, and
Yeah.
I have a pipe cleaner for an arm. So
if I was biomechanical and had a cyborg arm, I would be better at it. I will give you that. But
okay, now we're talking about cyberball. And speaking of people who have a
Risky
computer where a
operation.
heart, and speaking of people who have a computer where a heart should be. I mean, before we get into it, and we're going to talk a little bit of dodgeball in this segment. There's someone who I'd like to throw a dodgeball at. A certain guy named Rishi Sunak. He's the Prime Minister of Great Britain. And imagine this. Imagine, if you will, the mother of a young trans child who was murdered in a hate crime. It was at Parliament today. Was watching Prime Minister's Questions today. Guest of her local MP. Publicly acknowledged at the start of Prime Minister's Questions by the leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer of the Labour Party. Knowing this, and I'm not giving an attention, GB News, BBC, ITV, a lot of you have tried to give Rishi a pass. No, we're not giving him a pass. The man's there. You know he's listening. You know he's paying attention.
But it's a bit rich, Mr. Speaker, to hear about promises from someone who's broken every single promise he was elected on. I mean, I think I counted almost 30 in the last year. Pensions, planning, peerages, public sector pay, tuition fees, childcare, second referendums, defining a woman. Although in fairness, that was only 99% of a U-turn. The list goes on, but the theme is the same, Mr. Speaker. It's empty words, broken promises, and absolutely no plan.
He's so pleased with himself, with this dumb shit and grin. He's so amused, and I'm just fucking over it. Like,
of all the weeks to say that, when Brianna's mother is in this chamber, shame, parading as a man of integrity when he's got absolutely no responsibility.
You know, and I'm glad that Keir's speaking up here against Rishi, but also there's
Thank you, Mr.
so
Speaker.
many
And may I
trans
take the
folks in
opportunity
Labour.
to ask the Prime
Maybe you
Minister
should
if
try
he would
speaking to
consider
them.
apologising to Brianna Gray's mother for his insensitive comment.
And Mrs. I could just say also to Brianna Gray's mum, who is here, as I've said earlier this week, what happened was an unspeakable and shocking tragedy, Mr. Speaker. And as I said earlier this week, in the face of that, for her mother to demonstrate the compassion and empathy that she did last weekend, I thought demonstrated the very best of humanity in the face of seeing the very worst of humanity, and she deserves all our admiration and praise for that.
The rhetoric,
like she should have his job.
Right. The rhetoric that they put forth in fucking Turf Island is such nonsense. Like,
that's what got that kid killed. Let's just go there.
Absolutely.
In many ways,
say that it wasn't a contributing factor. Absolutely.
The whole atmosphere in the UK is just it's beyond toxic. And I know he's with the Tory party. I know he's with the degrading trans people. You can only be sure with the conservatives because this is what they've done. And if it's not the conservatives, it's Piers Morgan and GB News and
we are the acceptable bigotry. At the end of the day, we are the ones that, if nothing else, you can always count on kicking when they're down, is trans people. like I just saw something just a little bit ago that was like something that like another like a British person, Katie Montgomery, was talking about her experiences and how she
Katie-
hopes that she hopes that if she's in a position with an abusive man, that man doesn't clock her as trans, because that's just going to make the situation worse.
Yes, it will.
Obviously, absolutely. I think all of us can speak to our own lived experiences and the ways in which that if someone's willing to enact violence against women, that if you think that they're not willing to enact just as much or worse violence against us, like I think, how can you not say that? But also, how can you ignore the fact that, like, I've absolutely been in situations where I know that I'm so scared of like them knowing that I'm trans, because they're looking to be aggressive and they're looking to be hostile, and you have to always that smile and nod, downplay, get out, all of those kinds of defense mechanisms that women everywhere learn in these situations, and that's part of that, universal, that commonality of experience, that they are so ready to deny us. And I think that's one of the things, we are all in this together, we are all in that same boat, and we are all at the same whims and worries, but you're so unwilling to give us that because you so are committed to your bigotry about us. And it's just it's not
and
awful.
what's even worse about this situation is this thing was said, and you go every news report, all the pundit shows, news shows, I've been talking about this. This was a thing when this broke Wednesday morning. This was a thing to where literally pundits were talking about it. But what's the common denominator through all this? Again, not a single trans person talked to in none of this. I mean, and even the few outlets in the UK I like James O'Brien over at LBC,
I just presume
who I love because he sticks it to the facts, and I like that. But you mean to tell me that none of these people could have like at least gotten in touch with Katie Montgomery or a Felix Fern?
Paris Lees wasn't available, like who's someone I've enjoyed reading forever.
Yeah, I mean Abigail Thorne wasn't available to at least talk. There are people that can speak to this.
It's going to be hostile, and it's so they don't want to give us that representation because it's a lot harder to deny us our humanity when you can actually see us as people and that are living our lives. And I don't know.
I mean, that's one thing. At least
the worst.
Yeah, that's one thing I at least see getting better among the press, at least in the United States, in a small way. Is you're finding that more and more now the press is realizing that there are trans people that can speak to this. I mean, for example, the recent one thing I noticed in what was talked about a great deal in your respective home states was the local news outlets were talking to trans people. The local news outlets were talking to parents of trans people. Trans people were centered in the discussion. So I'll give kudos to the Ohio Press Corps. Of course, I mean there are certain outlets that do a lot better than others. Like the Buckeye Flame does a great job.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I read Ken's amazing.
Yeah, the Buckeye. Yes, Ken, we're giving you your shout out because you do them. I live outside of Ohio and I read the Buckeye Flame because that's where the reportage was.
Absolutely. But, they're doing such important work at the Buckeye Flame. Like, and I think it speaks to the fact they do have trans writers on staff too. And having trans people in your newsroom is so important. Like,
and that's the other part.
Kinds of discussions.
And that's the other part. There's a whole organization of trans journalists, the TJA. I'm a member of it, Trans Journalists Association. I mean, attention. For example, all these magazines that want to all of a sudden that are finally jumping into this story. You know what? Call me. Or call Frankie De La Creta, who and Frankie's putting in work. Two very important stories. They're doing some great work. Two very important stories right now that Frankie's been doing. Of course, Erin Reed, who that I used to like whenever like one of the Sunday morning chat shows are talking about trans issues. I used to pull my hair out screaming at the TV as they have all these cis people going, Erin Reed lives right down the street. All your shows originate from Washington. Erin Reed lives down the street. Y'all can go get a car, grab her, bring her into the studio. I mean, it was good. It was good seeing her on Minority Report with Sam Sater this week. It was good seeing that. She was on Minority Report. Check that out. Check out Wednesday's Minority Report, where she's giving the lowdown on the stuff like that ridiculousness in Iowa, where they will out you, where they want you to out yourself on your driver's license.
That is such a scary proposition.
They want you to put like MTF on your
Well, but again, speaking to what I brought up with how Keedy got piled on for her comments, being outed as trans in situations where it's not safe to be is a hazard to us because, a lot of people don't like us just for existing. And they bring that. And
but my Twitter mentions say otherwise.
Yeah, I think it's all sunshine and rainbows. They're all holding Blaha's hand. Yeah. By the way, Chelsea had never heard of Blahaj. We had to
explain to her what Blahaj was.
Explain her the culture of
our shark friend.
Yeah, we had to explain to her what the plushy shark was. I mean, and I'll admit I want one.
There's not an IKEA near you?
There is an IKEA near me. It's just that I keep wondering what would people think if I got a Blahaj.
That's fair. By the way, which socks are you wearing today again, by the way?
Which socks am I wearing today?
No, I didn't know that she...
Are we going there today? Are we going there?
Aren't we, my friend? What we got going on? What would people think?
We don't go there. Okay, fine.
No, let's see it.
There. Let's do this. Fine, I'm wearing the Neapolitan one. You happy? I'm going all Neapolitan programmer socks.
See, what would I think? I think you have great taste. So I think that's why you should
And you know what? And you want to know what's wild? I have 2 pair of those because I had one pair that got torn because we had a cold weather football practice last season before the start of the season outdoors. It was cold, so I wore these. Let's just say the entire team is not buying.
Yeah, so you deserve a Blahaj.
Yeah.
To quote our quarterback after seeing those socks, Dink, you really are trans.
I don't think any of my team knows enough of the culture to be like, wow, you really are.
No, but you see that go in a way that goes back to having cis people who get it is wonderful. But there's also a next level that I want cis people to understand, and that's exactly what Shauna's talking about.
Getting references like Blahaj Blast.
Yeah. Well, but not only that, but understanding how unsafe the world is.
Absolutely. Seriously, like in all seriousness, like absolutely.
How unsafe the world is. I mean, I have a lot of cis people in my life, thankfully, who do get that, but even those who get it really don't understand the levels and the depth of this.
No, and I appreciate when my friends, like, for lack of a better word, forget that I'm trans. And I have that experience where they're like certain things will come up and they're like, "What do you mean you don't?" Oh yeah,
yeah.
And I get that kind of.
That's not a bad. That's not a bad thing itself.
No, it's not a bad thing, but I think there is something to be said though about a certain it's harder to have then the awareness of those differences when you don't see them. So it's a double-edged sword because it's ultimately a positive thing. I wouldn't want to just be the trans one, and so I appreciate that by and large I'm not in my friends groups. And I mean especially these days. But that's a whole nother story. The pandemic helped a lot of girls and theys and gays come to themselves, and so. Man. But regardless of that, though, but yeah, I think there's something to be aware of. Oh gosh, things aren't always as simple. That it seems easier on the surface, but that's just because you get used to navigating those spaces well. And that I think that ability to kind of blend is something that was much more important to me, especially earlier in my transition. Like I'm it's been a decade for me, so like it's been a minute, and so like I'm very glad that where my sense of self is not in feeling the need to hide my transness, especially in certain ways, and to not express it. Obviously, like the dangerous situations are a different story. Like, if I'm out at like, random dive bar, I'm not like going to be like, and let me tell you about my genitals. But like,
change the watch
Shauna.
face, switch out your watches,
yeah,
your
like,
jewelry, all
I've
that
got
stuff.
I've got the cape. I mean, I do have some great earrings. They're like they do say they're the like pink Barbie font, and they say bimbo down them. Those are a certain place, location kind of earrings. That's not an those are an everyday earring.
You understand
Depends on your
where
everyday.
Yeah.
But one thing is that you understand where your walls are. I mean,
you have to be aware of that.
But
I
on
know
the
you
other
understand
side,
that,
but on the other side, you have to be true to you.
Absolutely. And I think finding that balance of how to walk and navigate that is so important, and is obviously something that isn't taught, and isn't something that you do just kind of
learn
have
it.
to learn by doing. And you learn when you can be more yourself, and when being more yourself is not always the most positive thing, then you don't always get closer with those groups. And finding, like I appreciate that I have a lot of friends who give me space to make my bad jokes, and to, just be myself as I want to
Oh, we
do.
get you. Oh,
Look,
like this space, for example. Now, one thing of what
exactly
want to switch gears into something, because I know Shauna, big week for you ahead.
Absolutely.
Big week of you ahead. I mean, first off, give it for those who may not know, a little primer into the USA Dodgeball Premier Series.
Sure. So the Premier Tour has been going on for several years now, and it's basically one of the top level competitions of dodgeball in the country, and it's ultimately the feeder league for those who will go on to represent Team USA in international dodgeball competitions for the World Dodgeball Federation. And so we play with 3 different ball types. So that's with something that's an interesting distinction between, like, let's say, the Pro Bowl, for instance, and what they were using. So they use a ball called 8.5, these like giant dodgeballs, like what you think of as like a stereotypical dodgeball, which is interestingly enough actually what the college sports plays, because there is the NCDA, the National Collegiate Dodgeball Association, where a lot of my friends came from, because there's like Ohio is like a very large college dodgeball scene, interestingly enough. Like Ohio State's actually like #1 in the country.
Now I'm just wondering, these NFL guys, we're rocking the Pro Bowls dodgeball competition thingy last week. Could any of these guys make it in the USA level?
CeCe Lamb could. CeCe Lamb was getting it done. That guy had some catches. He stepped in. He threw at ankles, and I think that's one of those things that's really interesting. Is so many people throw these like meatballs to like the shoulder, and like they're just like trying to throw like this. Well, that was a less than great throw.
But that's something important. You're trying to throw now. Oh, he just went over the somebody.
He just went over the center line. Like, I feel like it's interesting that I would expect NFL players to have a much better sense of boundaries and lines in sport, but they're just like hopping out of they had a real fast and loose sense of boundaries in this game.
Football players having a fast and loose sense of boundaries?
I
don't think that would ever fly in the NFL.
No.
Oh no, I mean, oh no, Deshaun Watson.
Wow.
Paradigm of restraint.
We'll leave him just completely.
But no, we just saw
CeCe Lamb though. CeCe Lamb got it done. I was impressed by him. I think that I would like to see what they could do with like with a no sting ball or with a foam ball, but also like the people who love 8.5 love 8.5, because there's actually multiple going to what you were talking about with football. There's like kind of like soft rival organizations, because there's the National Dodgeball Association, the NDA, and then USAD, which is the one I play on, because USAD is much more represented. Like, I feel like they have a much stronger women's division, first of all, and I feel like there's like versus NDA, which still uses the 8.5 ball, which is like, I don't know, like one of my friends calls it like the finger breaker, because they're these like giant like ball. They're huge and they're so heavy and like.
Now I want to ask a strategic question because I was watching.
Okay, sure.
This.
Yeah.
A strategic question. Here they are, both sides get. Now this was a match where no one went for their balls.
Okay, I was wondering about that because when I was watching this, I was like, that's a choice. Like, and I feel like they were like, so. First off, all the balls should start would normally start, I think, on the center line, but like, for instance, in like under like USAD rules, they have it where each side gets 3 and 2 balls, and then who has ball control switches each game. And so like, but you have the like designated balls you're rushing for, and this doesn't make any sense. It was a bad decision, and it just like slowed the game down in like a very like, okay, what are we doing here? What was the thought here? See, like, watch. Whoever is in the back in the dark blue just like stepped all the way out of the red, like without a care in the world. Like, very soft boundaries.
I didn't understand that either. I didn't understand. I'm just wondering.
I don't think the announcers understood. Like, nobody understood because it didn't make any sense. Like, it was just like, and now we've got all the balls, and it's like, okay, like But you know what? That's why it's very amateur, and I don't know that the Pro Bowl really grew the sport of dodgeball. Like, I almost wish they would like make it more of a tie-in with dodgeball. I think that would be kind of a cool thing, but I don't know that that's necessarily what they're looking to do, even as this has been a staple event now for like the past several years.
Now, a question for both of you.
Sure.
Before we head out to this segment of the show, we talk a lot is talked about in terms of inclusion. Shauna, you're in a sport that is inclusive by leaps and bounds. I mean, your experience, Julie, you and I are in a sport which is heavily queer and is surprisingly inclusive. I did not think I would be able to play.
I didn't either, to be honest.
And to be told not only told that, oh no, there's room for you to play, but both of us having interviewed you before, and you talked about how the Chaos has embraced you, the Reapers have embraced me. Because I've been a believer that we need a fresh take on sports. We've been playing the same games for up to 150 years. To get the inclusion we want, that means we have to widen out the center to include a fresh take in sports. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think that it's very interesting just how few new games that have been created. Like thinking about things like quad ball, which also has a very large following in college, or ultimate frisbee which is having its own issues with inclusion. But like, I think it's fascinating how I don't even know what I would like go about trying to design. But I think maybe that's arguably why I've enjoyed playing dodgeball, is because it's such a unique feeling sport. Like, it's all of my favorite parts of sports. Like, it's like throwing, catching, just enough running, but not like so much running. And it's also active, so I'm not bored, like waiting in the outfield and letting my ADHD kick in and be like, oh shit, the ball. And so I don't have to worry about that as much. And so that's nice. It's always focus time. I think that's actually why, like, I feel like my ADHD helps me in dodgeball, because I'm very good at focusing on multiple different things at once, and so it's easier for me to like always kind of have that like attention focus.
Julie, how about you? What could especially women's tackle football, which is proven to be one thing I noticed about women's tackle football, it is real queer.
It is incredibly queer, and like it's almost to the point that I know some of my some of the cishet teammates have sometimes had like a little feeling like maybe I don't belong here, and I'm like, no, you absolutely do. That's the old saying. It was like, yeah, I feel like I'm the only one like me on the team. I was like, yeah, I know what that feels like. I'm like,
every
no, you don't.
day.
You're queer. Like, there's lots of queers here, and I was like, really? It took them that long to actually remember that I'm trans, because the entire time they were like, no, there's like a lot of queer people here. I don't understand why you feel alone. Like, okay, we're just going that way with this. But yeah, I think that in a lot of ways, I see a lot of things with women's tackle football, especially trying to change up the game, change things, in a lot of different directions, while still trying to really recreate um, an era of football that doesn't always exist so much anymore. I see a lot of real 80s, 90s style type of coaches and
Round
offenses.
pound kind of.
Yeah, like we're gonna go power run, and I'm looking around we've got one person. Y'all got one person on your team who's over 200 pounds. You probably don't want to try to power run against us, and so you see a lot of that, and I think it does give space to find new ways of attacking, from that side. And sometimes with a sport that is so traditional, because football is very steeped in that tradition, changing things up too much almost alienates what you would have as a fan base. I think really where you're seeing the growth of sports is outside of what we would consider normal physical realm into esports, where there is a lot more parity, there is a lot more inclusion, there's a lot more toxicity and awfulness in its own rights, but you do see a lot more representation and a lot more kind of freedom to be whoever you are, because it's not seen as physical, so you don't have the same kind of baked in biases that you see when trans women or literally anybody different is trying to compete in a traditional sport.
I see that as well. I'm a believer that that the more traditional, quote unquote, the traditional in quote sports, I think they need some catching up. I want to, for example, one of the things I think that my football experience has taught me is that, to me, football should go in this direction, because I have friends who said, women play football, then they go see a game, okay, it's football. I mean, and there are players, and it's good football. And at another level,
I've had the PWHL with hockey. That is with the same thing of this is good.
But here's the thing: that's some real good. That's been competitive hockey so far.
Absolutely.
But also at the same time, I look at, for example, what we've talked about, and I'm going to say it again before we head off the break, is, right now at this time of year, obviously the NBA is going to be the NBA, but also you have men's college basketball is not the headliner right now. Women's college basketball is where the fun is. It's where the stars are. It's where the news is. I'd be hard pressed to name who the potential men's All-Americans in college basketball and Division I college basketball will be. I can give you 30 names in the women's side of the game.
I don't even know if Ohio State is good in men's basketball, and I'm in Columbus, so
they're in the middle.
That should tell you quite a bit. I don't even know if people are mad at it.
They're pretty middling from everything I've seen.
They're in the middle. They're right now. They're in that NIT scrum right now. They're in that scrum of teams that might make the NIT.
Right.
Ohio State's women are in the scrum, are at least bubblicious right now.
Yeah, I know that I know more about the Ohio State women's team than I do the Ohio State men's team, and that is in a very it's Columbus. It's all Ohio State.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Chelsea, but we could say that why Chelsea's not here.
Yeah, it does make sense that we would. I think that there's something really funny that replacing Chelsea in this week with a Columbus resident and with someone who is really funny to me.
No, that's just another reason why we need Julie to come back. That fur would fly.
All I'm saying is I'm free in November. So from what I understand, there's some sort of a game that goes on there that would be wonderful conversation piece.
Oh,
I'm very about that.
I'm.
And it's funny because even though I live in Ohio, I much prefer Michigan to Ohio State, because Ohio State, I think, has some of the worst fans. There is a insufferable element to that fan base that is just rough.
Look, I can't say anything about the fan bases I'm a part of because I'm a Cowboys fan.
Right.
I'm a Atlanta Braves fan. Hey, I dodged the Yankees at least,
That's
and I'm an
good.
Ohio State fan. Like I'm doomed. I'm doomed to
That's
be
fair.
surrounded by jerks. Like
No,
I
that's a
understand it,
good
and I look at
point.
them and like,
Hey.
you don't even understand the sport you're so upset about. Can you please take all of the seats?
That's so true.
I think that I think if there's one thing we all have is that we have our fandoms around people that have strong feelings about our fandoms. I mean, Shauna and I twice a year during football season are going to go at it.
It's true.
And it goes back a lot farther than us. But when we come back here, we're going to take a little break here at the transition defense. But first, it's not only Super Bowl Sunday, it's Pet Bowl Sunday. Dogs and cats with more on that. Here's Kirby's Corner. We're now checking in with Kirby the cat, who's now the owner of the cat team that's going to be playing in Sunday's Pet Bowl. She's also going to be out there playing as a wide receiver. And she just got off the practice field. Hey, Kirby, got a minute?
Carly, I just got out of practice. And oh, by the way, pan that camera over to the other of the bowl. Notice how it's empty? Hello? What did I tell you? What's the most important bowl? It's not the Super Bowl, it's the cat food bowl. And that bowl's not filled right now. So while I'm drinking this water, why don't you fill the bowl?
Well, before I do that, I just got a couple questions. Number one, who you got for the Super Bowl?
The Super Bowl? Really? You got the biggest game going on in the world Sunday, and all you care about is that little Super Bowl? Dogs versus cats? It's our game? Hello? We're gonna play to win the game.
Oh, don't you walk away from me. You owe me an interview.
Okay, fine. Gonna take the Chiefs. Chiefs are gonna win it. Chiefs got that karma. I say Chiefs 35-31, but it's gonna be a banger. It's gonna be a great game. But I think Chiefs gonna win.
Who you got for MVP?
Believe it or not, I think your MVP is gonna be Isaiah Pacheco. He's gonna be big. He's gonna score 3 touchdowns. Kind of like me against Dog Breath and her team on Sunday.
Oh, talk little blowing board material.
Hey, they're not ready for the big cat. By the way, all of you, Pet Bowl, right after transition defense, check us out. Go Cats. Now, Carly, fill the bowl.
And welcome back to Transition Defense, the podcast here on this Super Bowl week. I'm Carly Chardonnay Webb, Shauna Atkinson, special guest, Julie Day from the Columbus Chaos. And Julie, I got to know you in part, not just from football, but from a quote.
This diverse group of women from all walks of life made me feel more safe and secure in who I am than ever before. We practiced, fought, won, lost, experienced amazing highs and devastating lows as not just a team, but a family. For a lot of us, the field is the place for us to escape all the things we were dealing with in our day-to-day life. We all get to set that aside for a few hours on a Saturday night to go play football with our sisters. The past 12 months has been the best sports experience of my life. Being able to just be myself and for my teammates to see me for who I am has blown everything I knew about being part of a team out of the water. To deny this experience to any young woman, even one who happens to be trans, is nothing other than cruel. People love to tell athletes to shut up and play ball. Please, let me shut up and play ball.
Please let me shut up and play ball. How important was it for you to put yourself out there, not just as a member of the Columbus Chaos, but also in your day job at Kaleidoscope Youth Center, to stand online and make your opinions be known?
So a lot of it really did feel like we were kind of heading into sort of the final chance. Like that was really the last chance to kind of say what we need to say before before all the things that they're doing now, before they finally got to the opportunity to kind of drive that nail in as they were intending on doing. So for me, a lot of it was really just that kind of sense of duty. I do work with a lot of people who do activist work day in, day out, and you hear them, and I had that moment of like, we've had a lot of our cis staff members talk about these issues. We've had a lot of our non-binary staff members talk about these issues, but there weren't a lot of trans women, especially trans women athletes, speaking during these things about the athlete's part. And there was a part of it that kind of felt like a little bit selfish, if I'm being honest, because like everybody's giving these really big impassioned speeches and well thought out, well researched, impeccable, you know, dissertations on the healthcare piece, and that is such a huge piece of this that I also didn't want the youth who were going to be kicked out of their teams, or the ones who were debating on whether they even wanted to play sports. I wanted them to hear at least some voice speaking up. See a face is like, yeah, I'm still doing this. I'm 37 years old. We're still out here. We're still doing it. You know. So I guess in a way, I just sort of that sense of like, I couldn't not do it at that time. And
I don't think there's anything selfish about wanting to be a possibility model for others, first of all, because I think you're right. Like, literally, what we first started talking about is how seeing Jacqueline do her thing was an inspiration to you both. And I guarantee you that there is at least one trans woman who saw you that day and was like, shoot, I can do this. She's doing it. And like, I could do it too. And I think that's why it's so important that we all try and use our voices in this moment as things have gotten so dire. And like, because that's something that, like, honestly, hearing you speak, it helped inspire me to want to speak more on my experiences in my sport, because I think it's so important to put that out there.
Yeah, and I appreciate that so much because, it did have that moment of like, well, do I want to talk about all the stuff around the healthcare, around my own experiences being trans and all the terrible things that I've dealt with before and after transitioning. And then I was like, the story about sports is not, it's the Cinderella story. It's that story of overcoming. It's a story of success. As much as it is those stories of failure, those stories of heartbreak, it's also those stories of overcoming the obstacle. So hopefully, that could have been an inspiration. I don't know. That just feels like a weird thing to like. I wanted to be an inspiration to people, but it's like I wanted to give people hopefully a space to feel what they were feeling in that moment, and also kind of put in front of these people making these decisions that, yeah, you don't know enough about women's sports because you don't even know we have a women's football team, and you're here
No.
every day.
And,
So
again, that visibility, it matters because
Absolutely.
I was watching that, and the first thing when I saw that jersey and I saw the WFA emblem on it, I stood up in my chair. I raised up in my chair seeing that because I was like, this is someone who plays this game like me. And at that same time, thinking, I've got to at the time I was building this story and thinking, like, I have to interview you. I have to find you because this is a person with whom I have a kinship with this person because I want to get to know also this person's story just beyond this moment. What was it like for you on your team? See, that's one thing we will do on this podcast at some point. I want to get yourself and get Erica Meacham and get Jacqueline Cook. And I want to put the call out. If you are a trans woman that's playing tackle football in any league, we're going to do this after our respective seasons are over. I want to have a round table. I want to have a round table right here at this forum where we can actually just talk amongst ourselves about our experiences. But no, it was great just seeing you. And not only is it great seeing you tell about it in that legislative hearing, we have we have this thing here at transition defense. We have a tradition that we show the highlights. So we're going to show yours. We're going to show you. Here's Julie all stage. First off, let's talk about this. Wow, Bud Grant would love you. You block kicks.
I had 3 block kicks on this season.
That's amazing.
Oh, and let's talk about this. Just swallow the running back up. Did you have to swallow the back up like that? I just want to know.
I actually did because
And how
I
about
also
this?
had to do it to the QB there.
You did it to the QB. And look at you. Let's talk about the flex here for a minute. And then you flex afterwards.
You know,
On both the plays.
That is
You're
what
bringing
it is.
it like this. Show
It's
the
actually
guy.
it's wider. It's wider. It's mostly like this. And it's just like, I don't know when I started doing that, but it was actually more of a stretch than it was a flex. So it's like it was just something that I did in that moment. It was like, and now my teammates are looking for me to do it in different places. So
All right, I love that. Like,
yeah. Like they found it in a video of me blocking. It was like, no, that was actually just me adjusting my my shoulder pads down. You're like, you hit him with the Superman. I'm like, no, I didn't. I was literally just pulling.
Oh, did you open it up?
They thought I was. I was just doing this. Like I need to breathe. But yeah, so that first punt is actually against St. Louis Slam. So that is a Division 1 WFA Pro team. That poor punter.
Yeah, I mean, I know you did kind of like you did.
I hesitated at a moment because I was like, I don't want. You're so tiny.
I know. See, that's the first thing is like, see, that's one thing. Size is a very different dimension when you're all in pads.
Yeah, and like I was standing because I'm getting over an injury right now, so my practices aren't as exciting as I'd like them to be. But I was standing in between like 3 of my teammates, and I'm just like, I'm small right now. Like I don't have my pads on, and they do, and they're like towering over me. I'm like, I just want to feel small for a moment. I'm just gonna stand here. But yeah, that the size difference with pads on and everything is just it becomes so different. Yeah, it's a good time. I get excited watching football and getting ready to play it again. So
I love that.
But no,
when does
that's
your season start?
Yeah, when
I
does it
believe
start?
we start April 27th.
Okay, so you're in the preparation space. You're getting ready for it. Like,
yeah, our preseason started in January. So we're still going through practices, getting everybody just finally gotten pads, so they're learning how to hit. It's a good time, especially for our rookies who a lot of them have never hit anybody before. So I can like everything that you're imagining, knowing as many football players as you do, Shauna, like that is exactly the looks on their faces when they're like, I have to hit somebody now. Like,
I'm sorry.
And I'm going to get hit.
What was it like for you that first time where you had pads on with the chaos? What was it like?
It was so the first time was I was apprehensive. I wasn't sure because you hear all the terrible things about us, and sometimes you have that moment where like maybe they're right. You know, you have that doubt, and I don't think any of us we never really talk about that, but like I do think that at some point we all have that like moment is like, what if they're right about this?
Absolutely.
Like, so like I held back and I got popped, and I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna show you what I can do.
But that's such a true thing though, of like where like I think about like, you know, like my sport, I'm like, shit, if I held back, like I'm just going to get out and I'm going to be like, well, that's that. Like I have to use everything I have because they're going to do the same. Like, and I think like there's something to like our sports that like I think there's such a competitive streak and such a competitive nature that I just like I feel like even if anyone was like on the side of like, you don't belong. Like, they're like, well, they're just going to get you out. They're just going to tackle you. They're just going to use their talent to the best of their abilities.
Exactly.
Like, that's how I always like think of it. Like, even in the worst case scenario where there's someone harboring a secret prejudice, which, thankfully I haven't seen, but, I'm sure that there's someone out there with an opinion that is been, stereotypes or based in misinformation, of which there's a lot. And so,
Absolutely. And then once you let yourself actually play, actually let go and just have fun with it, I can tell you that football has never felt that way to me before.
True.
I've known football from the experience of somebody who football was a very, very good way to keep a lot of people off my back. If you're an offensive lineman and captain of a high school football team, not a whole lot of people are going to believe all the things that get said when you're also hiding a secret side. So it was a very good cover. And it also kept, my family's from Appalachia, some West Virginia rednecks, so kept them happy. So that was sometimes the best goal, was to keep them not necessarily abreast of all the information that they could be having.
Doesn't feel free knowing that now you can go out there as you don't have to hide anymore. Because I don't know about you, that's the way it feels for me now. I don't have to use this to hide anymore.
No, it's not. It's actually a place where I get to flex. I get to, have those moments of just enjoying the sport and making a play and doing the things that, like, everything that felt so routine before now feels important. It feels good. It feels just freeing. And, the support of my teammates, the support of this, like, we always called sports families. And like, you have those moments where you're like, this is a little cheesy. And then you have the moments where, your teammates broken down. They're broken down on the side of the road after practice. And next thing you know, your head coach and 3 other people are there trying to like put a tire on some strip lug nuts. Not speaking from this week's experience or anything.
Hey, I feel that, because that was my entire last season. It's like to go from being able to walk in and to go in from being able to first meeting these people, and you're thinking like, there's no way these people are going to accept me. And then not realizing that, can we get her on can she play? Yeah, then we got to get her on the team. And then next thing you know, realizing that then next thing, you go through this whole process and you realize these people have taken you in.
Oh yeah.
And like, it was before the first game, and I realized like, fuck, I'm one of these people. I mean, like, when coaches are telling you, you're one of us now. When players are telling you, you're gonna be fine, sis. When people are looking at you, they're not looking at you as just you're my teammate. The trans thing they don't see no more.
Yeah, and like I always tell this little story. One of my teammates had mentioned that originally she didn't necessarily she didn't agree that trans women should be competing in sports, and she's had some conversations with some players. Yeah, after talking to this person, like, I completely understand it, and I'm sorry I ever felt that way. And she was actually one of the first people who came up to me and was like, because she could tell I was nervous the first time in the locker room, because, as a offensive line, defensive line sized person, some of the things for transition are not necessarily available to me. So she was like, no, you're next to me. You're good. If anybody has a problem, they can come through me. And nobody ever had a problem. There was never anything to worry about, but it's just that feeling, like knowing somebody who had previously held some of those beliefs and is now like, no, you're my family, you're my sister, you're here. So,
well, a lot of those beliefs, though, they come from, frankly, prejudice is built from ignorance. If you don't know, you're going to fear it. If you don't know, you're going to look down on it. when people know, and I'll admit part of the reason why I want to keep playing in the sense is to have that opportunity, to have that platform, so that we can change minds just by being out there. I mean, and that was the other thing that struck me about you being there in that moment. You have to deal with a trans woman who plays a sport,
not knowing I would be back on the gridiron
and
in just over
immediately
15
any
years.
misconceptions
This
that you
time,
had
so I
have
really
been
am.
destroyed.
I heard people like me
They
lambasted
should
on the
be. If
news
they
for
haven't
being
been, they
South
will
Park.
be.
I heard sports radio hosts.
They will be destroyed on the field and off.
And it was interesting because they had no other questions for me. And I was like, you can ask me anything. I will answer every question. And I think there's a little bit of, sometimes when you're in a position where you don't necessarily have the advantage. And I feel like that in that moment, they didn't feel the same advantage they felt other times. They were very particular about when they decided to follow up on people. So if it was a bigger organization or representative of something that they particularly wanted to have, a tete-a-tete with, or if they thought that the person may not have been able to hold their own. And they underestimated a lot of people, and I'm glad that so many people made them eat their words.
And I hope that the legal eagles from the ACLU ultimately make them eat their words. It's good that they're fighting back. Ohio, you're about to be chastised. Now,
hey, at least I'm very grateful though that the one rule was they removed the adult care restriction today. It came out that because so many people submitted comments on this rule that was going to require a bioethicist for any adult seeking transitional healthcare, and it's such a ridiculous and onerous who has it? Because they're just bioethicists lying around. How much can a bioethicist cost, Michael? It's ridiculous. What are we doing?
I can tell you this much: don't let up. Thankfully. All I can say is don't let up. Ohioans, don't let up, because
that's where
what did Gary Click say? Oh, you got to take it one piece at a time. They're fighting this fight. They are fully committed to erasing us.
Absolutely. And even with that one rule removed, I'm glad that they did. The rest of them are still heinous.
Absolutely.
The data collection piece is the most terrifying piece to me.
And that's something that we've discussed, because of the if you just change hospital providers, it looks as though you've detransitioned, and that is just one insidious way that that data manipulation can and will occur.
And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to do everything they can to just try and make sure that they can just run us out of existence. Not realizing that the fact of the matter is we're going to be here whether you want us here or not.
I think I said this in your article. The worst part is, not all of us will.
And that and I'll tell you that a lot of people read that and really thought. Now, there's one thing before we get out of here I need to get a clarification on. And Shauna, you're in the know on this. Okay. I'm a neophyte on this. Okay, 3 handshake rule. What's up?
Okay, so there's a saying that you're 6 handshakes away from anyone who's very famous. So everybody knows someone who knows someone who knows someone. But for trans people, we are 3 handshakes away, and I think that is very true. And I always think of between you and politics and activism circles, and Chelsea with anybody in the porn world, and my friend Jacqueline who knows Hollywood, that I was I love that I'm oh, it's absolutely true. I know all of these, I appreciate those connections and the small world of transness. I just think that's such a cool thing that just goes to show that even though our community is small and sparse and spread out, that we still have those connections to each other. And I think that's just a really cool thing.
I second that. And because of a podcast, I got to know so many people.
Right.
And in many ways,
my friends are so talented and so amazing and wonderful, and I appreciate that so many of them have helped me out on that front. So thank you, Carly, Chelsea, Jacqueline.
Well, hey, let's talk about you, Miss LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce, for a second. I mean, you're moving it and shaking it.
Look, I do what I can, and at the end of the day, putting myself out there in queer business is something that I'm excited to continue doing, and love that, as I get to build and make those connections, and, at the end of the day, getting in those rooms and being able to influence and have, speak on our experiences is so important.
Yeah, that representation matters. Whether it's on celluloid, whether it's on a ball field, it all balances out. I mean, I'm grateful to the people I've met because I've gotten to meet so many. In the last 5 years ago, this year is when I started at Outsports. That was 5 years ago. Yeah, 5 years ago in June, and that came off the heels of a week that changed my life. I got my name changed that week, and I immediately played in my first competitive sports event under my finally my real name, the name it's mine, that weekend. And at that same weekend, somebody who I had grown very close to, and I'm still very close to, made a piece of history. And that's something that's news to me this week. And I want to touch on this real quick. Can you believe this year, this may be the 5th anniversary of CeCe Telfer winning that NCAA championship.
No kidding.
Yes, May 26th is the 5th anniversary of CeCe Telfer becoming the first out transgender student athlete in NCAA history to bring home a national championship.
She's what,
an individual national
runner?
Championship. What?
Was she a Division III runner?
Division 2. Division 2, 400-meter hurdles, Franklin Pierce University, New Hampshire, 2019.
No, and then the world ended, unfortunately. Which
And
I
then,
think really that
no,
sucks,
but here's the thing.
What can we do?
June, her autobiography comes out.
No kidding.
He wrote a book. Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's exciting.
CeCe's been working on a book, and on Wednesday, she announced that book is coming out. It's going to be the whole origin story in her own words, how she got from A to B to T and all parts in between. She is a person who has gotten I don't think she's gotten enough shine for what she did. Yeah. In fact, the name of her book is Make It Count. Pre-orders are being taken. I've pre-ordered it. I wrote an article on it in 2020 on just how I got to know this person and what this person meant to me. Because at that time, that inspired me to keep pushing in sports. That's what inspired me to keep growing and competing, because she did that.
I really like the theme of this podcast being inspiration, and I think that's a great sentiment to end on, is how we don't even know all the different people that are inspired by us, that they don't realize that they've inspired us, and just so grateful to get to spend this time with two, amazing women, getting to talk about your experiences, which I really appreciate. Thank you again so much for joining us, Julie.
Yeah, Julie, thank you for being here. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you for having me. I couldn't have never imagined I would be in this space with you two amazing people, on such an important day, talking about such important people, such important things, and some stupid things like the Super Bowl. Don't tell my coach I said the Super Bowl was stupid. But yeah,
I have to miss it. I'm gonna be flying. I'm probably going to pay for internet to watch it on the airplane on the way home, because the only flight I could get back from Tempe.
I'll only be able to listen to it because I'm in a production of Vagina Monologues at the University of Hartford, and our show is next week. So next week, this coming week is Tech Week. We're just running straight run-throughs all the way through. And I'm only going to get to listen. I've been in this show 6 straight years. I've had to listen to the Super Bowl 6 straight years.
That's a lack of intersection, I think, of sports fans and theater kids. Like, I feel like there should be more like.
Well, hey,
who are the fans that show up to our stuff though? Because it's the theater kids who show up to root us on.
Because there's nothing wrong with theater kids who play theater kids. You can play sports. Remember, there is a Super Bowl MVP who took ballet. If you want to know how good he was, ask a Dallas Cowboy. They'll tell you.
Ending on slander is only our podcast can. I love that. Good B.
Yeah, that is the transition defense for this week. I'm Carly Chardonnay Webb.
I'm Shauna Atkinson.
Oh, and I'm Julie All Day. I didn't know I got an outro, so I'm learning.
Yes, you do get an outro. Chelsea Pope will be back from the Netherlands next week, and so will we. Enjoy the Super Bowl and enjoy the Pet Bowl. Coming up on Shar Sports 1. Switch on over to Shar Sports 1. Check out the Pet Bowl.
Did we do Pet Bowl picks?